Hi guys, and welcome to Unit 5 in Com 110. So this unit is going to look at culture and communication. And this unit gave you a little bit of a break with kind of breaking up the Unit 4 into 2 weeks. So hopefully you felt a little bit of a reprieve. But we are going to sort of hit the deck running with Unit 5 and looking at culture and communication and some of the different assignments. So this is one I would say just utilize your time management skills. There are a few different assignments and it is a bit of a time consuming unit, but absolutely worthy of your time and attention. So for this particular unit, a couple things I would like to highlight, of course, are supplementary material. So in addition to the reading, which will be very, very important for this unit, you can see that the pages are right here. One of your assignments will deal with some of the information that comes straight from your book. So do make sure to read through and take notes on those pages. I also have PowerPoint and then a quick video lecture. Again, you may find that helpful just to kind of understand a little bit of what I'm looking for with some of the cultural variations and interpretations, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So some of our big assignments. The first is just a quick journal, and this is really a quick write, just looking for a paragraph here, but just asking you to think about your own experiences with other cultures. And I want to sort of put out there, let's stay away from defining cultures maybe particularly just as geographical regions. So just because you've never visited maybe another country or another part of the United States doesn't mean you're not exposed to other cultures. So we can define culture as other religious groups, people who just live a little bit differently than you do. So they have different beliefs, values. You could look at cultural differences between families. I mean, no two families are exactly the same. So there are many, many opportunities to experience interacting with people from other cultures. We live in a very diverse community. So I'm sure at school or out in the workplace, you've interacted with someone who came from at least a slightly different background than yourself. So I'm just asking you to talk through some of that. What were your experiences? Why is it important for us to be aware of other cultures and other cultural values? And how did that interaction change you or your view of your own culture or their particular culture? So again, just a good paragraph there will suffice, but just kind of getting you to start to think about, how you interact with people and what are some of your experiences before we even really dive into this unit. The next thing you're going to do is we're going to look at culture in terms of a different country, and you are going to start to look at some cultural values that are present in other countries and cultures. So this is going to take you to a Padlet, and for this assignment we're actually going to use a resource that's offered through NASH. It is A to Z the World. And there are some directions up here, so it'll tell you how to do that. So what I would do is go in, you need to pick a country that's not already represented on the Padlet, so you're going to have to read through and figure out what that is. And then you're going to have to do a little bit of research in this particular database about that country. So I'm asking you to choose and identify 3 cultural values. So just as a reminder, a cultural value is something that's held in high esteem by that particular culture. So for example, giving me some information about the geography of the land or the language, those are not cultural values. Instead, what I'm looking for is how do they view marriage? How do they view time? What are some of their customs related to gift giving? Those types of things, because those are cultural values. So do make sure to just double check that what you're putting on the Padlet is a cultural value and not just information about the country. The other thing that I want you to make sure that you're doing is to make sure that you are putting that information in your own words. So this is something that we're not copying and pasting, so you should read through that information and then recreate it in your own words. Even if it's kind of close, that still comes up in a plagiarism checker. So do make sure that you are fully integrating what you learned through your own voice, and just double check that you do that. If not, it will earn you a 0 on the assignment and you will sort of have to go through the whole plagiarism thing. So don't let that be you. Just make sure you put it in your own words. And I did put a sample up there so you can kind of read through that on France. So that's the first big assignment. Our second big assignment is going to be to do a cultural analysis on your own culture. So I'm asking you to identify who is in your culture. So you may choose your family as a culture. Maybe, again, you have a particular association with a group, whether that be a religious group or a social group. You can choose them as your quote-unquote culture. You could choose Nash Community College as a culture. You could choose being a member of the United States as a culture. So you can get as sort of narrow or broad as you'd like. So you're going to identify that culture. You're going to talk about their values, their beliefs, provide examples that show how those values or beliefs, morals, practices are reinforced by the culture. And that's going to be question 1. The second thing that you're going to do is identify some cultural perspectives. So in your reading, you're going to see that a culture probably leans towards one of 2 perspectives. So you have each on one end. So for example, we'll talk about masculine and feminine. So cultures identify pretty much as either a masculine culture or a feminine culture. So it's going to be your job to take your culture and decide, okay, if I want to talk about masculine or feminine, I need to select one. So maybe my culture exemplifies masculine traits a little bit more than they do the feminine. For that one especially, make sure that you realize it has nothing to do with biological sex. So for example, the Amazonian women would be an example of a group that is entirely made up of females. However, if you read the description of a quote-unquote masculine culture, they exhibit some of those characteristics. So high competition, place more emphasis on material things, or gaining power, those types of things. So it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you're a feminine culture, you're made up of females, or you're a masculine culture, you're made up of males. So just kind of make that distinction when you are working through that assignment. But some other examples of choices would be sort of how you deal with high and low context cultures. So a culture is either high context or more towards low context. Time orientation will be another one that you can look at. And those perspectives are all spelled out in your book. So you're going to choose one or the other, and you're going to choose 3. So let's say my culture was maybe low context, feminine, and short time orientation. And I'm going to describe why I think that provide examples to support. So that'll make a little bit more sense when you go through the actual assignment. But just as always, make sure you're pulling in examples and that you are picking out one of the 2 ends of that spectrum and describing why. So your book will be a big help for that. And this is something that will take a little bit of time. So like I said, Unit 5, because you have those 2 big assignments, and then obviously your journal and your quiz, do make sure you try to, space those out. You're not trying to do all of that in one night, because I can tell you that would be impossible. Or if possible, it wouldn't be a very good submission. So just try to make sure that you're taking some time to work through those. And as always, if you have questions or concerns, you can feel free to shoot me an email. All right. Have a great week.